a collection of scary stories you've never heard before. Get ready because we're about to begin.
Rain never really stops in Hollow City. It's the kind of rain that turns streets into mirrors and washes the color off everything. Taxi headlights slice through the fog, glowing sickly yellow on cracked asphalt. Behind one wheel sits Jack Harper, 28, hollow-eyed, a man who lives more at night than in daylight. He works the graveyard shift, driving strangers who never speak and never tip. He tells himself he likes the quiet, but the quiet listens. The radio hums. Another body found near District 17. Police suspect the same killer. Facial mutilation identical to previous cases. Jack switches it off. The words echo anyway. Facial mutilation. District 17. He lights a cigarette, watches smoke crawl across the windshield. The flame trembles, or maybe his hand does. The city blurs by like a fever dream, pawn shops, motels, broken billboards flashing. Girls' beer rooms. Jack thinks about how people disappear here and no one even blinks. Hollow City just swallows them whole. Dispatch crackles through static. Pick up on Hollow Street, destination District 17. Jack exhales through his teeth. Of course it's District 17. The place has been closed since the meat plants shut down years ago, leaving only rust and rats. He answers anyway. Copy that. Money's money. He drives into the storm, tires hissing through puddles, the smell of diesel and decay seeping through the vents. Every red light feels too long. Every shadow looks like it's waiting. When he reaches the pickup, the street is deserted. A single street lamp flickers above a collapsed bus stop. No passenger. Just fog moving like smoke from a dying fire. He waits 5 minutes. 10. Then he notices something near the curb. A black leather glove, soaked through, glistening dark red at the fingertips. He picks it up. It's heavy, sticky. Blood. Real. From the alley comes a faint sound, not footsteps, not exactly breathing, more like someone dragging metal on concrete. Jack freezes. Hello? Silence answers. He drops the glove and bolts back into the cab, locking the doors twice. For the next 3 blocks he drives without blinking. The rain thickens, hammering the roof. The radio flicks on by itself, just static and a woman's scream that cuts short. Jack slams it off, swearing. His hands shake. Then, a ping. New ride request, District 17. Same location. He almost throws the phone, but before he can stop himself his thumb presses. Accept. He mutters, I'm losing it. Halfway there, he spots a figure waving on the roadside, a man in a gray hoodie. The guy slides into the back seat, dripping wet. Doesn't look up. For a full minute, silence. Only the wipers ticking back and forth like a metronome counting down. Jack tries. Long night? The man chuckles, a sound too dry for a human throat. They screamed, didn't they? Jack's knuckles whiten on the wheel. What did you say? No reply. At the next light the man whispers, Stop here. Jack brakes. When he looks back, empty seat. Door never opened. He blinks hard. The seat is wet though, and on it, an old Polaroid photo. A woman smiling. Her face scratched out until the paper tore. At the bottom, written in something brownish red, Smile for the camera. Jack can't breathe. He drives aimlessly, every reflection in the windows stretching wrong. Each time he looks at the mirror, he thinks he sees someone in the back seat, just for a second. Then the seat's empty again. He pulls over near a diner, runs inside, coffee spilling from his trembling hands. The waitress eyes him. "Rough shift?" He nods, doesn't answer. The TV behind the counter shows breaking news. Police confirm another killing near District 17. Witnesses report seeing a yellow taxi leaving the scene. The camera pans briefly, the same model as his. The same dent on the door. Jack's stomach flips. He leaves the coffee untouched and runs back into the rain. He drives straight home, an old apartment where wallpaper peels like skin. Inside his mailbox, an unmarked envelope. No address. He rips it open. Inside, a cassette tape, handwritten label, "Play Me." He finds his dusty tape deck, shoves it in. Static. Then a deep, distorted voice. "You drive them. I finish them. You forget because you choose to." Jack rips the tape out, breathing hard. The words echo in his skull like church bells. He stares into the bathroom mirror. For a split second, his reflection grins, but he doesn't. 3 days without sleep. Jack keeps driving. He tells himself he's working, but really he's chasing something. Every night he circles District 17. The factory ruins call to him like a wound that won't close. At 2 a.m. he finally parks outside the old meat plant. Rusty gates hang open. Inside, darkness so thick it feels alive. He steps through puddles that smell of old iron. His flashlight flickers over hooks, chains, and walls stained with something too dark to be rust. Then he sees them, photographs pinned everywhere. Dozens, hundreds, human faces torn from IDs, magazines, maybe real people. And right in the center, his own photo. Circled in red. Something moves behind him. A whisper, almost kind. "Welcome home." He spins, light shaking. A figure steps from the dark, tall, wearing a butcher's apron, a mask sewn from patches of human skin. The voice is gentle, familiar. "You've been my driver every night." Jack backs away. "Who are you?" The figure tilts its head. "You, Jack." He peels off one glove. A scar runs across his wrist, identical to Jack's. Flashbacks hit. The blackout nights, blood under his nails, the missing dashcam files. He remembers his wife's face. Her murder here years ago, the rage that broke something inside him. He screams, "No! You're not real!" But the butcher steps closer. "We share the same hands." Jack grabs a rusted wrench and swings. The light dies. Wet thuds echo. Screams overlap. Maybe his, maybe someone else's. Dawn leaks gray over Hollow City. The meat plant burns, orange against the rain. Jack staggers outside, soaked in smoke and blood. Sirens wail. Police swarm. An officer kneels beside him. "It's over. The butcher's dead." Jack laughs, raw and broken. "Yeah, he's gone." The cop opens the taxi trunk. Inside, a fresh mask still dripping. Cut to later, hospital room, fluorescent lights buzzing. A detective leans over him. "We found 12 bodies, all your fares. Can you explain that?" Jack stares at his hands, bandaged and trembling. "I don't remember." The detective's voice lowers. "Then who was driving?" Jack looks toward the window. In the reflection, another Jack smiles back, calm, clean, eyes full of night. The heart monitor spikes. The reflection whispers, soft as rain. Ready for another ride? Screen fades to black. Rain starts again over Hollow City. It was cheap. That's what mattered. When Daniel Pierce, a struggling journalist, signed the lease for apartment 6B on Willow Street, he told himself it was only temporary. The building was old, older than the city itself, the kind of place that leaned slightly as if tired of standing. He moved in with 2 suitcases and a laptop, ignoring the peeling wallpaper, the constant drip in the bathroom, and the smell of mildew. The landlord, a small woman with trembling hands, had only said one thing before handing him the keys. "Don't talk to the man in the hallway after midnight." Daniel laughed. "What man?" She just looked away. The first night was quiet except for the pipes groaning like they were alive. He unpacked his things, ordered cheap takeout, and wrote until 3 a.m. When he stepped out to throw away the trash, he noticed something. Every door in the hallway was shut tight, except one. Apartment 6A. Its door was slightly open, light flickering inside. He called softly. "Hello?" No answer. The smell hit him, something sweet, rotten, like old meat mixed with perfume. He shut the door gently and went back to his place, trying to convince himself it was none of his business. The next night he woke to knocking. 3 short taps. He thought it was his door, but the sound came from the other side of the wall, 6A. "Maybe a neighbor," he mumbled. "Or pipes." But then came a whisper, soft and dragging, right through the plaster. "You shouldn't have looked inside." Daniel froze. He pressed his ear to the wall. A slow, rhythmic sound followed, wet dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Then silence. He tried to laugh it off the next day. Journalists weren't supposed to believe in creepy things. But when he asked the landlord who lived in 6A, she said quietly, "No one. That unit's been empty since February." Daniel frowned. "I saw light in there last night." She just shook her head, eyes wet. "You didn't." That evening, he slipped a note under 6's door. "Hey, if you're real, maybe stop scaring me. 6B. No reply. But when he returned home from work, the note was back under his own door, smeared with something dark. Blood. By the end of the week, the smell spread into his apartment. It seeped from the vents, thick and nauseating. Daniel covered his face with a towel, but the scent clung to him, filled his clothes. He called maintenance, no answer. Finally, he knocked on 6's door again. No light this time, just total dark behind the crack. He turned the knob, unlocked. Inside was empty. No furniture. No people. Just black stains on the floor in the shape of 2 feet, pointed toward the wall. And written above them in messy letters, "Stay on your side." He tried recording the noises that night with his phone. At first, only static. Then faint breathing. And a voice, distorted but clear. "Don't let them in." The next morning, his phone was gone. He found it later under his pillow, still recording, 7 hours of static. But the last 5 seconds made his blood run cold. The sound of his own door unlocking. Daniel started sleeping with the lights on. At 3:12 a.m., he woke again. This time, the knocking was real. His door shook under the weight of it. He whispered, "Who is it?" A man's voice answered softly, "You left the lights on." He froze. Through the peephole, he saw nothing. But when he backed away, The doorknob turned slowly on its own. Click. He grabbed a chair and jammed it under the handle. The knocking stopped, replaced by a faint scratching, like fingernails tracing wood. The next morning, he stormed into the landlord's office. "Someone's in that apartment." The old woman looked at him with sunken eyes. 6A burned last winter. The tenant never left. Daniel's voice trembled. "Then who's talking to me?" she just said. "You've heard him, didn't you? Then he's already moved in." He ran back upstairs. The hallway was cold now, frost blooming on the walls. The door to 6A stood wide open. Inside, a chair facing the wall. On it, a recorder. He pressed play. His own voice came out. "Don't let them in." He checked the file date, 3 days before he even moved in. That night, he packed his bags, but every time he tried to leave, the hallway looped back to his door. No matter how far he ran, he always ended up in front of apartment 6B. The light under 6's door glowed red. The voice came again, softer, almost tender. "You're already home, Daniel." He dropped his keys. The air smelled like rot and roses. When police finally entered the building a week later, they found apartment 6B empty. No furniture. No luggage. Just a single chair facing the wall, and a phone still recording. The last minute of the file was nothing but faint knocking, and a whisper close to the microphone. "He left the lights on." Fade out. Slow rain over Willow Street. The dark forest always kept its secrets. The elders in the nearby village used to warn, "Never go there after sunset." The trees seemed fused together, like one living creature, their roots crawling out of the ground, twisted like the bodies of monsters. Hunters sometimes entered, teenagers looking for thrills, and the occasional tourist drawn by its mystery. But none of them knew that behind every step in the thicket lurked something worse than the dark, something watching. First came the sound of snapping twigs, as if someone was walking alongside them. But there were too many footsteps, and no people in sight. The story begins with a group of teenagers who decided to spend the night by a campfire. They laughed, telling each other legends about the forest man, but one boy, Igor, kept glancing over his shoulder. A single thought rang in his head. "Someone's watching us." In the distance, a figure appeared, tall, hunched, with hollow eyes, white completely gone. A girl screamed, "Did you see that?" But the others just laughed. Only Igor noticed how their laughter echoed back to them, yet it wasn't their voices. The flames flickered, the wind fell silent, and suddenly there was an unnatural quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves. A girl named Lena went to fetch water from the stream and never returned. At first, they thought she was joking. Then they went looking. All they found was her bucket lying in the mud, and tracks leading deeper into the forest. But the tracks were strange, like a person had been dragging another body. Panic set in. One suggested they should run back to the village. But the trail behind them was gone, as if the forest had swallowed the road, leaving only the path forward, deeper into the darkness. Branches whipped across their faces as the trees grew tighter, every turn looking the same. Panic grew heavier. Suddenly, Lena's scream echoed through the woods, but it wasn't real. It was distorted, broken into fragments, like someone was imitating her voice. Igor realized it was bait. They moved faster, but ahead stood another silhouette. A man in torn clothes, holding a massive knife. His face was smeared with something black, only his eyes gleaming like those of a beast. He didn't walk, he glided between the trees. The teenagers scattered in different directions. A mistake that would be fatal. The forest swallowed the teenagers one by one. Igor ran alone, heart hammering, branches tearing his skin. Somewhere behind him came heavy, wet footsteps. He stopped for a moment, holding his breath, and heard it, the sound of something dragging across the ground, flesh, maybe, or a body. From the shadows came a whistle. Not human. Too low, too distorted. When Igor turned, he saw a shape crouching behind a tree, its head tilted unnaturally, as if bones had been broken long ago but still moved. And in its hand, the knife glistened in the pale moonlight. Another scream tore through the night, this time one of the boys. It was short, cut off instantly. Silence. Then the sound of gnawing. The others froze, realizing they were not just being chased. They were being hunted, devoured. Panic spread again. They tried to regroup, but every step deeper twisted the forest into a maze. Some trees looked marked with strange symbols, carved crudely, dripping as if with old blood. They realized this wasn't random. The killer knew these woods better than anyone. This was his home, his trap, his feeding ground. The survivors dwindled. Only Igor and two girls remained. They stumbled upon an old wooden shack hidden in the thicket. It reeked of rot, animal skins, and something worse, death. Inside hung bones, some clearly human, tied together with rope. The girls began to sob, covering their mouths. On the floor, they found Lena's necklace, snapped in half, blood-stained. Then they heard a creak from above. Slowly, Igor raised his head. On the rafters, crouched like a spider, was the killer. His face was clearer now, half burned, half covered in mud and ash, eyes wide and wild. He dropped silently between them. Chaos erupted. The killer's knife slashed, the girls screamed, blood sprayed against the walls. Igor managed to shove one girl out of the shack, but the other fell silent in an instant. Outside, he and the last survivor ran, but the forest twisted again. The path never led out, it only circled back. Every shadow looked alive. Every gust of wind sounded like breathing. At one point, they swore they saw the village lights, but when they reached them, it was only dozens of lanterns hung in the trees, flickering around a ring of bones. The killer had set the stage long ago. The girl collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering she couldn't go on. Igor tried to pull her, but she was frozen. Then, a hand shot out from the ground. No, not the ground, but a shallow grave hidden beneath leaves. Dozens of corpses surrounded them, half buried, their faces twisted in terror. The girl screamed, and in that moment the killer struck. Igor turned too late. Her scream ended in gurgling silence. Blood seeped into the soil, mixing with the corpses beneath. Now Igor was alone. Exhausted, trembling, Igor stumbled deeper. He no longer knew where he was, only that the killer was always near. The forest itself seemed alive, pulling him toward the inevitable. Finally, he broke into a clearing. Moonlight revealed a massive tree, its roots forming a hollow like a mouth. Inside, bodies were stacked, decayed, skeletal, all staring with empty sockets. Igor fell to his knees. He realized every story told in the village was true, but no one survived to confirm them. Then he heard it again, that broken imitation of Lena's voice, whispering from behind. The killer emerged slowly, knife in hand, no need to rush now. Igor tried to crawl backward, but there was nowhere left to run. "Why?" he begged, voice cracking. But the man said nothing. Only a grin stretched across his disfigured face. The forest held its breath. Then the blade came down. Pain, blinding and endless, swallowed Igor's world. His scream echoed through the night but was quickly silenced, like all the others before him. The forest accepted another soul. Morning came. The forest was silent, peaceful again, as if nothing had happened. Birds sang. The sun painted golden rays across the leaves. Villagers searching for the missing teenagers found nothing but abandoned backpacks near the stream. No bodies, no blood, just emptiness. The elders shook their heads. "The forest takes what it wants," they muttered. At night, when the wind howled, some swore they could still hear faint screams echoing among the trees, or laughter that wasn't theirs. The legend of the forest killer grew, but the truth was far worse. He was still out there, waiting, watching, and the forest would always hide him. The desert stretched endlessly, a barren ocean of sand and silence. The sun had long since fallen, and a pale, cold moon hung over the dunes. A small group of travelers, lost after their truck broke down, trudged forward under the starlight. The wind whispered through the dunes, carrying strange voices, sometimes like laughter, sometimes like screams. They thought dehydration was playing tricks on their minds, but the shadows stretching across the sand moved in ways that didn't match their bodies. The youngest traveler, Mark, swore he saw figures walking alongside them, tall and thin, with faces hidden under cloth. When he pointed, the desert fell completely silent, as if listening. They set up a fire using scraps of wood, but the flames seemed weak, swallowed by the desert night. Sarah, the eldest of the group, told them about the legend of the Desert Watcher, a spirit that hunted the lost. According to her, it never killed right away. It stalked, whispered, and fed on fear until its victims begged for death. The others laughed nervously, but then the fire hissed and died, as though smothered by an unseen hand. The temperature plummeted. Around them, the sand began to shift, rising and falling like something was crawling underneath. A deep hum echoed in the air. They clutched each other, realizing the desert was awake. The travelers decided to keep moving, hoping to find the old highway. But the desert warped around them. No matter which direction they walked, the dunes seemed to reshape, funneling them in circles. Footprints vanished seconds after being made, erased by the shifting sand. Suddenly, Mark screamed. He claimed a hand had grabbed his ankle from beneath the sand. When they pulled him up, his leg was bleeding, deep claw marks cut into his skin. Sarah whispered a prayer, but her voice cracked, because in the distance, at the top of a dune, they all saw it. A figure cloaked in black, face hidden, standing impossibly still. The moment they blinked, it vanished. Exhaustion set in. The group stumbled into what looked like ruins, crumbling stone pillars jutting from the sand. Strange carvings covered the walls, depicting twisted shapes of half-human, half-serpent creatures. In the center lay a pit, black and bottomless. The air was thick with the stench of rot. One traveler, David, insisted they rest there. But as soon as they closed their eyes, the whispers returned. Not just one voice now, hundreds, layered, chanting in a language none of them knew. David awoke screaming, claiming something had crawled into his mouth in his sleep. His tongue was blackened, swollen, and his eyes rolled back. Within minutes he was dead. The others fled into the night, but the whispers followed. By now, Sarah and Mark were the only two left. The desert seemed endless, the stars above unfamiliar, as though they were no longer under the same sky. Every shadow stretched toward them. Every dune looked like a giant watching silently. Sarah collapsed, whispering that the desert wanted them to stay forever. Mark tried to carry her, But then he heard it, a low voice speaking his name. It came from Sarah's lips, but her eyes were lifeless. He dropped her, realizing she was gone. When he turned, he saw the cloaked figure again, closer this time, knife-like fingers glinting in the moonlight. Mark ran, stumbling through the dunes, his lungs burning. Behind him, footsteps echoed, but they weren't his own. He screamed for help, but the desert devoured his voice. He fell to his knees, the sand swallowing him inch by inch. He looked up one last time at the sky, where the moon now looked like a giant, lidless eye staring down. As the desert consumed him, he finally understood. No one ever truly got lost in these sands. They were taken. The whispers weren't the cries of the damned, they were warnings from souls forever trapped beneath the dunes. By dawn, the desert looked calm again, hiding its victims under the endless waves of sand. The wind carried faint echoes of Mark's final scream, and the legend of the desert watcher lived on, hungry, patient, eternal. Mark stumbled through the dunes, lungs burning, every step heavier than the last. Behind him, the footsteps followed, steady, patient, like a predator enjoying the chase. He cried out for Sarah, though he knew she was gone. His voice was swallowed by the vast emptiness of the desert. At the crest of a dune, the cloaked figure appeared again, closer than ever, its head tilting unnaturally, pale light flickering where eyes should be. Mark dropped to his knees, clawing at the sand as whispers rose around him, pleading voices, mocking laughter, cries for help. The ground shifted, and skeletal hands broke through, pulling him down. He fought, but the harder he struggled, the deeper he sank. The last thing he saw was the figure's hood falling back, revealing not a face, but a hollow void that reflected his terror. The sand swallowed him whole. By dawn, the desert was calm again, golden under the rising sun. No bodies, no tracks, only silence. Yet when the wind howled across the dunes, travelers swore they heard faint screams, and sometimes their own names whispered back. Friday, March 24th, 1993. Montgomery Falls, Oregon, a quiet town surrounded by endless pine woods and a river that always seems to whisper when the wind blows through it. It had been raining for 3 days straight. The streets glistened like black glass, reflecting neon lights and red taillights from the few cars that still roamed this late at night. Emily Harper, a 20-year-old college student, finished her shift at the local supermarket, Green Mart. She folded the day's receipts, tucked them into her purse, and smiled to her coworker. "See you tomorrow," she said. Those were her last known words. The next morning, her Chevrolet Nova was found abandoned on the side of Hilltop Road, just before the turn into the forest. The headlights were still on, the engine warm, rain dripping from the hood. Her purse was on the seat. One of her shoes lay in the mud. Police officers combed the roadside, their flashlights slicing through the fog. They found footprints, one set smaller, bare, and another set heavier, boot-shaped, leading into the woods. Then, nothing. The trail vanished where the mud turned to pine needles. Sergeant Ray Miller, a tired man with 20 years on the force, stood staring at the tree line. He muttered to his partner, "If she went in there, she's not coming back." By sunrise, Montgomery Falls had changed. The town that used to hum with coffee shops and morning chatter was now silent, like the world was holding its breath. Local radio repeated the same message every hour. "Police are asking for assistance in locating 20-year-old Emily Harper, last seen leaving the Green Mart parking lot." Outside the store, someone built a makeshift memorial. Candles, photos, a stuffed bear soaked by the rain. Neighbors whispered through thin apartment walls. She never hurt anyone. Why her? She was studying nursing, for God's sake. She was too trusting. Detective Miller sat in his car that night, watching the rain beat across the windshield. The police report on his dashboard was already smeared with coffee stains. 4 missing women in 3 years, all in their early 20s, all on a Saturday night, all within a 40-mile radius. Different counties, different departments. Nobody had connected the dots, until now. He took a long drag from his cigarette, exhaled into the dark, and whispered to himself. He's hunting them. And we've been too blind to see it. 2 weeks later, a hunter found something in the woods 10 miles north of town. He thought it was an animal at first. The smell hit him before he saw it. Emily Harper's body was discovered beneath a fallen pine, her hands bound with coarse rope, her eyes covered with duct tape. There were no signs of sexual assault. No wallet. No fingerprints. Just silence. The autopsy revealed bruises on her wrists, ligature marks on her ankles, and traces of chloroform in her system. Detective Miller stood in the coroner's office, staring at her pale face. He didn't kill her fast, the coroner said quietly. Miller didn't answer. He just looked down at the file and noticed something odd. On her shoulder, under the dried blood, was a small, deliberate cross carved into the skin. April 1994. Another girl. Same age. Same day of the week. Same missing person pattern. By now, the FBI had joined the investigation. Agent Laura Chin, 33, sharp-eyed and clinical, met with Miller in a small diner outside town. "You've got a serial offender," she said flatly. "Organized type. Keeps trophies. Possibly religious delusion. The cross mark is symbolic." "He's local," Miller replied. "Knows the terrain too well to be passing through." They built a timeline. Each victim had been last seen near a highway exit or a rest stop. Always Saturday. Always between 9 p.m. and midnight. Each body found near water, rivers, lakes, swamps. The media started calling him the preacher. Fear became routine. Women stopped going out after dark. Stores closed early. Children were told not to talk to anyone driving a van. Local TV ran interviews every night. Mothers crying. Police sketches. One blurry image caught from a gas station camera. An old white Ford Econoline with rusted doors. License plate unreadable. Miller's wife begged him to take a break. He started sleeping in his office instead. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. to the hum of the vending machine, staring at case photos pinned on the wall, young faces staring back at him. 4, 5, 6 of them. "He's mocking us," Miller muttered one night. "He knows we'll never catch him if we keep following the rules." June 1995. A woman stumbled into a rural gas station, barefoot, bleeding, shaking uncontrollably. Her name was Samantha Lowe, 24. She said she'd been taken from a bus stop 2 nights earlier. The man told her he was saving her, that the Lord speaks through silence. He wore gloves, a mechanic's jumpsuit, and always hummed an old hymn before he did anything. She escaped by jumping from his moving van near the forest line. Samantha's description gave them their first solid lead. A white male, mid-40s, pale skin, long hair tied back, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. A faded tattoo of a cross on his forearm. No accent. Calm voice. She remembered one more thing. He kept saying Hilltop Road. Over and over. Like a prayer. Detective Miller spent weeks tracing every registered Ford van within 100 miles. They narrowed it down to 3. One belonged to Joseph Creed, a former church janitor fired in 1989 for inappropriate behavior. He lived alone in a cabin on Hilltop Road. When the police arrived, the house was empty. Inside, they found ropes, duct tape, old hymn cassettes, and photographs. Dozens of Polaroids, all of women. Some smiling, some terrified, some unconscious. Each labeled with a date and a verse number from the Bible. In the basement, a wooden chair bolted to the floor. A small tape recorder still running, repeating on loop. And silence shall be your offering. An all-state manhunt began. Roadblocks, helicopters, dogs. But Creed knew the woods. He grew up there. For weeks he vanished, like a ghost. Until one morning, a hiker spotted smoke rising from an old hunting cabin 20 miles east. When officers broke in, they found blood on the walls and a single fresh photo on the table. It was Miller's wife. The phone rang at the station that night. Miller answered. "Detective," a calm voice said. "You've been looking for me. I'm right where she was." Click. Miller drove alone, ignoring backup. The forest swallowed his headlights as he reached the clearing where Emily Harper's car was found 5 years earlier. Rain started again, just like that night. Inside an abandoned shack, he found his wife tied to a chair, alive but barely breathing. Creed was there too, standing behind her, smiling faintly. "You took her from me," Miller said, gun trembling. "No," Creed whispered. "I only showed her silence." He raised a knife, and Miller fired. One shot. Then another. Creed fell back into the mud, eyes open, still smiling. Miller carried his wife out into the rain. She survived, but never spoke again. The doctors called it traumatic mutism. The case was closed. Newspapers printed, "The preacher dead." But Miller couldn't sleep. Something about the photographs haunted him. There were 18 labeled with Bible verses, but only 17 victims in the reports. Who was the 18th? In 1998, construction workers digging near the old Hilltop Chapel unearthed a shallow grave. Inside, a teenage girl, long deceased. A rusted locket around her neck engraved with the initials JC. DNA confirmed it. Joseph Creed's younger sister, missing since 1973. The town realized the truth. He had been saving women because he couldn't save his sister. He recreated her death again and again, seeking forgiveness that never came. Years passed. The woods grew back. The road dried up. But on rainy nights, locals say they still hear humming near Hilltop Road, an old church hymn echoing through the trees. Sergeant Ray Miller retired in 2002. His wife died quietly the same winter. At her funeral, a young detective placed a fresh evidence photo on his desk, a recent one. A new missing girl. Same age. Same night. A white van seen leaving the area. Miller stared at the picture, hands shaking. Then he whispered, "We buried the wrong man." The tape recorder on the shelf clicked once, and played, just for a second. "And silence shall be your offering." It started with a 911 call. A trembling woman's voice whispered through static, "He's in the house." Then silence. Police traced the call to a farmhouse just outside the small town of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Deputy Thomas Ray arrived at 2:47 a.m. The place was pitch black. except for the weak porch light flickering in the wind. The front door was open. The phone line had been cut. Inside, the house was cold, filled with that sweet, metallic smell that only means one thing. The house belonged to the Langfords, a young couple, Mark and Jenny, and their 8-year-old son, Kyle. They had moved there just 6 months earlier, escaping city life after Mark inherited the land from his late uncle. They wanted peace. They found something else. Neighbors said the Langfords kept to themselves. Jenny was friendly, often seen at the farmer's market. Mark fixed old cars in the barn out back. Kyle rode his bike along the creek road every evening. Then, 1 week before the 911 call, something changed. Jenny stopped answering the phone. Mail piled up on the porch. A delivery driver swore he saw someone watching him from the upstairs window, someone not Mark. When Deputy Ray entered the kitchen, the clock on the wall had stopped at 2:42. Dishes still sat on the table. A half-empty glass of milk. A family photo pinned to the fridge, faces smiling under summer light. In the hallway, dragged marks on the wooden floor. In the master bedroom, sheets torn, a broken lamp. But no bodies. Then he noticed something carved into the doorframe. "He comes when you sleep." Out back, near the barn, he found a small trapdoor under a pile of hay. He opened it, and the smell hit him first. Below the barn was a narrow concrete room, half flooded, filled with rusted tools and animal bones. And in the corner, a child's shoe. A flashlight beam caught something on the wall, Polaroids, dozens of them, pinned in crooked rows. Each showed people asleep in their beds. Different faces. Different houses. All taken from the same angle, through a window. Then Deputy Ray found the newest photo. It was of Jenny Langford, asleep beside her husband. The photo was dated 2 nights before the 911 call. The next day, investigators canvassed the area. They spoke with Samuel Lee, a retired mail carrier who lived down the road. He said the Langford's uncle, the one who left them the house, had been a strange man. Always building things underground. Samuel muttered. Said he heard voices from the creek. Said the water told him to watch. In the old county records, they found reports from the 1980s. Missing campers, hunters, kids. All last seen near Miller's Creek. No one ever found their bodies. That night, investigators sealed the property. But at 3 a.m., the motion sensor in the barn went off. When deputies arrived, the trapdoor was open again. They descended slowly. Footprints in the mud fresh. Something scurried in the dark, fast and close to the ground. The generator light flickered. For a split second, they saw him. A tall, pale man with long gray hair, crouched in the corner, holding an old camera to his face. One deputy shouted, fired a shot. But when they reached the corner, he was gone. Only the camera remained. Inside was a roll of undeveloped film. The film contained 23 photos, all taken in the past week. Each one showing the same family, the Langfords, asleep, eating, playing with their son. The final photo was different. It showed the dining table, empty chairs, and a shadow standing behind the camera. Forensics later found partial fingerprints on the film, belonging to Harold Langford, Mark's deceased uncle. He'd been declared missing in 1989. His remains were never recovered. 3 nights later, the Langford house burned to the ground. No one was inside. Locals said they saw lights in the windows just before the fire, like flashbulbs. The case was closed as an electrical accident. Deputy Ray quit the force 2 weeks later. He said he couldn't sleep anymore. He started waking up to the sound of a camera shutter when no one else was in the room. In 2011, a construction crew clearing the land near Miller's Creek found a buried metal box. Inside, a dozen old Polaroids sealed in plastic. The last one stopped everyone cold. It showed a man sleeping on a couch, a badge glinting on his chest. It was Deputy Thomas Ray. The timestamp? 2 weeks before his death, listed as a self-inflicted gunshot. Locals say on quiet nights by the creek, you can still hear it. The faint click of a camera, and the whisper of water saying, "He comes when you sleep."